share what we've been up to at the city, and really start to focus in on using what we've created in terms of a city biodiversity index and ecotopes framework, and to start to see where we are physically in the region. So I've got an actual real poster here that I'm going to share that starts to organize some of the big moves that are happening across the city. And then I'll conclude quickly with a kind of a vision, I think, for the future. So this is our City Biodiversity Index that we've created and will be rolling out here at the end of the month in the 2020 City Biodiversity Report. And this provides really a lot of metrics to guide projects and to help coordinate projects across the city and see where we're at as a city in terms of just what kind of an expert council has agreed upon as metrics for biodiversity. And biodiversity, quickly, for those who aren't too familiar with the term, it's what we've defined it as the flora, fauna, and ecosystems that enrich and sustain both the city and nature. So it's really in an urban environment about the benefits that nature provides to people, and then the benefits that and the conservation that it provides to nature. And Enrique Zaldivar, the CEO of LA Sanitation Environment, put it very nicely recently that biodiversity is kind of an umbrella metric. So if you have biodiversity, you have water quality, you have clean air, you have reduced pollution. So it's a really great metric, and it's kind of the ultimate metric in a lot of ways for urban resilience and sustainability. We've also provided a spatial framework, an ecotopes framework, which is a data set and management units, kind of like watersheds, that are really the building blocks of biodiversity in both natural and urban environments. And these are the units that we're using to measure biodiversity and ultimately guide the city as a framework for biodiversity, a physical framework. So here's the poster, and it's kind of hard to read and small, but it's this particular, I'm going to show 3 of these. This particular poster is looking at the quality of habitat and quality of biodiversity, kind of in a traditional definition, like where is the good stuff? Where's the nature? Where are the big patches of open space with a lot of the unique biodiversity? And you can see down in the legend, the red, these areas are designated sensitive ecological areas. The blue is a new layer that we've created at LA San that really starts to get at the kind of, it's kind of hard to read, but you see there's a lot of blue in a lot of the neighborhoods. Those are like unprotected but high quality biodiversity areas. And as importantly as all this high quality stuff is, the areas that are low quality, that don't have biodiversity, those are equally important, because those are the areas that provide opportunities for connectivity, they are indication of the lack of access to nature and the equitable distribution of nature in the city. And there are key areas that we need to look at for enhancing nature. And this is just an example of how the ecotopes framework looks at that. This is the percentage of natural areas in each ecotope. And you can see that, of course, the hills in Santa Monica's, Verdugo's, San Gabriel's have very high biodiversity, but very high nature, but these, F here down the lower LA River alluvial plain, it rounds down to 0. So there's no nature in this ecotope. And that ecotope is a critical building block for biodiversity in the city. It's also where people have the least access. So it's a key opportunity area, and that 0 is actually means it's a priority.
Isaac, if you can put your slides in presentation view, I think they're a little hard for some folks to see.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Let's see, how do we do that? Screen. Let's see, how do I do that? Can anybody help me with that quickly? I know my time is ticking.
It should be those things down at the bottom.
There it is.
I think.
Got it.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so this is the next version of our poster, and this is the enhancement. So this is some of the big projects that are happening in the city, and you can see the little, they're kind of clustered, Around the Elysian Valley, we've got a number of big kind of water quality projects happening, like and habitat Biona wetlands. We've got Echo Park Lake rehabilitation. We've got Machado Lake rehabilitation, that's D down at the bottom. So, you know, there's a few big moves happening, but not a lot. One of the bigger ones you'll see is the initiatives along the river, which is really key because that's a connected series of projects: the Lower LA River Revitalization Plan, the Arbor Reach, you know, Elysian Valley in the middle here, and then we're working on a fish passage project through downtown that links those two. So those are real key kind of projects that can provide a framework for the city. I'll highlight this other one. There's a little icon, that's the National Wildlife Federation in the middle there in the greater Wilshire neighborhood. They're trying to get the whole neighborhood certified as urban wildlife habitat, and hoping to be the first that will waterfall into the whole city ultimately for getting certified urban habitat. So that's a great example precedent project that's happening, we hope can be replicated. Over on the right of that poster, there was these indicator species, target species. These are great tools for urban biodiversity. We can look at which species make the most sense to focus on and drive design. We're looking at the steelhead trout for the rivers. We're looking at the mountain lion for the big open spaces, looking at rare species for some of this really sensitive, unique, endemic ecology we have in the city, like the El Segundo blue. And then the California scrub jay for real urban areas, like, you know, common species in a lot of places, but in urban areas it's not. And if it shows up there, then we are increasing access to biodiversity. The final piece I'll finish with is the connectivity piece. This is what ties it all together, and really a key step. You know, how can we link all of these ecotopes and link all of these urban environments through a connected network? And I'll just conclude kind of with a vision. Singapore, you know, this is the ultimate biodiversity city right now. We're trying to surpass them, I think, as a city, but they've really just, I mean, gone all out. They've got it in their policies and their codes. They've leveraged the wealth and the amazing, you know, Sheila Kuhl, we have $1 billion a year we spend on infrastructure. If we even put a fraction of that toward biodiversity, we would have an amazing place. And so that's, I think, where we want to go. And this is kind of the, you know, where we're headed. This is a project we did about 15 years ago for the History Channel. What is LA going to look like in 100 years? I think we need that kind of long-term vision. We're going to restore our watershed. We're going to create a connected ecological network or an eco grid. And we need to articulate that as a real next step. We need a physical master plan for urban ecology. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. So up next, we have Nancy Schroeds and Luis Rodriguez from Our Water LA, who are going to be presenting about engaging communities to invest in our water future. Take it away.
Do you guys see the screen all okay? The presentation? Thumbs up? Awesome, great. So my name is Nancy Schroeds. I'm the Associate Director of Policy and Outreach at Heal the Bay, and I'll go ahead and let Luis introduce himself as well.
Hey everyone, Luis with Tree People and also representing the Our Water LA Coalition. Nice to have everyone here.
And so we are going to be speaking today about Our Water LA, which is a coalition to engage communities to reinvest in our water future. And this touches much upon what Supervisor Kuhl was talking about earlier. This picture here is from when the Board of Supervisors passed Measure W, where our diverse coalition was working so hard as far as boots on the ground to get this monumental measure passed. So our vision as a coalition is a county in which all residents have safe, clean, reliable, and affordable water, regardless of where they live. LA County achieves this with modern and innovative infrastructure solutions to capture, clean, and move water across the region in a way that also results in a greener, healthier communities. So that's like our major goal as a coalition, and we'll walk you through what the coalition itself looks like. So one component is the core team, and you can see the logos of all of those who are in the core team. So that's Heal the Bay, Lane, LA Waterkeeper, Nature for All, Tree People, Scope, Pacoima Beautiful, the Nature Conservancy, Resources Legacy Fund, NRDC, and the Water Foundation. So I know a lot of names there, but that is the beauty of Our Water LA. It's a really diverse coalition of folks who came together for this core mission. So the core team itself, it manages the coalition efforts as a whole and identifies opportunities and priorities to reach our goal of clean, safe, affordable, and reliable water. And the core team also creates the strike teams as needed to review documents and these really technical documents related to water quality and supply in LA County, and provides well-vetted and science-based recommendations to decision makers. So when we're talking about our watershed area steering committees, making sure that we're providing this public feedback as to what are great projects to support and which maybe we shouldn't be supporting. And great projects for us are equitable, multi-benefit, nature-based solutions, good jobs for local communities, etc. I'll kick it to Luis.
Awesome, thank you, Nancy. So there's two other components to the way that the coalition is structured. On the left hand here, we have the organizers team, right? And these are all organizations that are also equally active as Nancy and I are. So I do want to make that very clear. There's a lot of organizations, and if you go to our website, you'll see that there's over 50 organizations that are officially a part of the coalition. So the organizers team, you see here some other organizations like Proyecto Pastoral, and Lane, and the organizers team provides opportunities to educate, engage, and activate the public, right? And I think that's one of the strengths, is that all these organizations have different bases, different strategies for engaging the public, and they have their bases that they've gotten to know and have those opportunities to network and educate. We had a really broad coalition meeting last month where we had a bunch of different folks come out and a webinar and re-educate themselves on opportunities to get involved. On the right here, we have the communications team. The communications team creates messaging, advocacy tools, and engagement opportunities to raise public awareness about the multiple benefits that can be provided by nature-based stormwater capture projects when they're made with community-based designs. So they're the ones responsible for a lot of our social media posts, the messaging, video content, things like that. Nancy, next slide, please. So these are just a few of examples of some of the concrete work that we've done. Some examples here, there's a picture that Nancy shared earlier when we filled the Board of Supervisors meeting. Different kinds of approaches. We've done different kinds of tours through different watersheds. We've done different community engagement opportunities through smaller meetings, just all kinds of different amazing things. Next slide, please. So this one, the last presentation was really amazing, and this idea of having different access points. I think that's the way that I would kind of summarize this slide here, right? So one of the things that we've noticed, and you probably know this as well, is you have to have different access points for folks to get involved. It's a very intimidating world. A lot of terminology that folks may not know. So what we have here are these 4 different ways that folks can get involved. So the first level is, for somebody who may not have that opportunity to commit a lot of time, right? So a supporter. A supporter is someone who maybe follows us on our newsletters, right? Maybe they sign up to get updates through our social media. The next level is a community advocate. This is somebody who attends events and shares resources with their community, right? And then we have a water warrior. So a water warrior is someone who attends events to provide public comment, right? And we know that that's very important. And then we have at the top level here is a team member. So that's somebody who actively participates in core organizer and communication teams meetings, right? So this is kind of a summary of the work that we're doing, and we'll look forward to any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Nancy and Luis. And finally, we have Ronan from UCLA, who's going to be presenting about turning our nation's road infrastructure to a network of stormwater treatment systems. Ryan, you're on mute still.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. I hope you all can see my screen now in the right way. All right. Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Renan. I'm a PhD candidate at UCLA, where I work with Stormwater. And today I'll be talking about this very ambitious and exciting project that I've been working with in my laboratory, or my guys' laboratory. And as you can see in this upper picture here, we can identify a clear problem with water management there, right? Because of this flooding. There's a lot of economical losses coming with flooding, sometimes life losses. And we all know that one way to treat or to remediate this flooding is by installing green infrastructures, as the bottom picture. Green infrastructures, they help water infiltrate to groundwater and replenish the groundwater, and also, most importantly, to treat the water before it goes to the groundwater, the river. And one of the main causes of the floodings in cities are the excess amount of gray infrastructure that we have, such as roads. And we should improve this road system instead of just being a transportation system. It can be both a transportation system and a stormwater treatment network. And the opportunity that we have is based on this picture. This is just the big highways in the US. We're not seeing the urban roads, but we see a lot of room to improve here. If we could turn this transportation system into a stormwater treatment facility, right? But with that, for that to happen, we have some challenges. The first one is how to design these stormwater treatment facilities, because by putting biofilters next to a road, we need a compacted biofilter, because roads itself, they are compacted soil, which decreases water infiltration and increases the risk of flooding, and we don't want that to happen. So how do we design these roadside stormwater biofilters that are compacted but still infiltrate water? The second challenge that we have is about the selection of the appropriate size range of these materials that we put inside the biofilter, because we want first to minimize the compaction effects on the biofilter, as well as to maximize the pollutant removal, because as I said, green infrastructures in general, they help infiltrating water, but most importantly, they help removing contaminants and making a water cleaner. The last challenge, or one of the last challenges, are creating a method, a cost-effective method to predict a clogging of the biofilter, because by putting this green infrastructure there, the last thing that we want is that these green infrastructure is the source of a flooding event. So we want to make sure that we can predict this clogging so we can act beforehand. So we've partnered with CALTRANS in a grant, where our main idea, as we can see here in this laser point, in this picture to the left, is that we have native soil and sand next to a road, and we want to add an amendment or a bulking agent. Mostly we've been working with biochar a lot, and that's the one that we're going to be talking today. Biochar is great at removing contaminants, and based on the studies that I'll show here, it's a great bulking agent to help roadside biofilters under compaction. So mostly, whenever we're adding a bulking agent or an amendment like biochar, we look at these three cases that are shown here to the right. The first case is that the bulking agent needs to help the hydraulic conductivity, meaning the water can infiltrate super fast. The second one is that the bulking agent should remove contaminants by attachment, which is the K sorption. The third K, which is the KDK, is that this bulking agent can help degrade the pollutant and not only remove, meaning these bulking agent, in this case the biochar, can remove the contaminant, but with time it's going to be able to degrade that contaminant. So we've published a few studies that I will present quickly. The first study is about these compacted biofilters, and how biochar can help the infiltration, or the first K, which is the hydraulic K. In this graph here, we see that the y-axis is hydraulic conductivity, so how fast the water can infiltrate. And we have 5 different types of biochar or of biofilters. The first one is uncompacted, whereas all the other 4 biofilters, they are compacted biofilters. And what we see is that compaction decreases hydraulic conductivity, but not enough to make this biofilter unfeasible, meaning compacted biofilters with biochar, they're able to infiltrate water still pretty quickly. So then we went towards the second K, which is the K sorption, the removal of contaminants. And we're seeing that in this graph here, the y-axis is E. coli removal and the x-axis is the amount of stormwater infiltrating. And we've seen that biochar, the removal of E. coli or the bacteria that we used, it depends on the biochar size, meaning whenever we had a large biochar size, it started losing its capacity to remove this contaminant, whereas a small biochar, it kept removing this contaminant despite the amount of stormwater that we injected. And that was another paper. And the last K, which is the KDK, that we've been investigating, is how this biochar can help not just removing contaminant, but degrading them. So we created this growth die-off index, which is an indicator of if bacteria can grow or if bacteria can die in presence of biochar in between rainfalls inside this biofilter. And we've seen that despite the biochar type, bacteria is actually dying, which is degrading this bacteria. And this is a paper that it just got accepted. So in summary, compacted biochar can help a compacted soil or compacted biofilter in infiltrating water, absorb pollutants, as well as degrading pollutants. So biochar is a promising bulking agent to turn this roadside soil into a natural filter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for our presenters for 4 really interesting presentations. Again, start sort of ruminating on your questions and entering them in the chat. I will start unmuting folks to ask some of those questions. I'll just kick off with the first one until some of those come in. And this one's for Ronan. Ronan, are there locations where you're looking at piloting this strategy? Are there certain places that work better than others for the application of biochar and for infiltrating stormwater along roads?
Yeah, so that's the next step of the project. We're still halfway through it. We've been mainly in LA collecting different types of soil along 405 and mostly big highways, because that's the one that generates the most runoff water whenever it rains. So mostly in LA and along California, but we are working on starting through the highways and moving towards the urban areas.
Great. And I see one question from Jeanette. Jeanette, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you to ask your questions about wetlands. So I think you have to approve me unmuting you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. My question is, at the Biono wetlands, I believe that Heal the Bay and others favor the idea of opening up the wetlands by digging them out 20 to 30 feet over probably somewhere around a 400-acre area. And that would then allow the water from upstream coming down Biono Creek to just dump all the pollutants in this area that would be dug out. Full tidal. It would also allow full tidal to come in from the ocean. My question is, this doesn't seem to, everything that you've said that I've heard indicates that this would be a terrible idea, that what we should be doing is really doing things from upstream on the way down, capturing water in many of the ways that you've discussed. I wonder if somebody could answer my question.
Okay, and maybe that's or Isaac about?
Yeah, I can take a stab at it. And I'm not involved in Biona wetlands, but my take on that, and I'll connect it back to my presentation, is, and it's something I said in my presentation, we need to decide really if it's about biodiversity, and I think a lot of what is happening at Biona is, what are our priorities? Which species do we care about? Which species can we agree on that we should focus on? And my understanding of Biona is that they're focused on threatened and endangered species that use those intertidal wetlands. Clapper rail, you know, maybe steelhead, some of the fish. So, and when you look at the designs, that's what they're trying to focus on. So it's those species that they're focused on. And, you know, I think we need consensus around what we want to focus on. And I hope there was consensus there that led to those decisions. And I'm sure some people won't be happy, but, you know, I think we need to make the same kind of decisions about all our urban environments. Which species should we focus on? Where should we focus on water quality and ecosystem services, or where should we focus on, you know, habitat for a species, which might be two very different design alternatives. So I hope that answers a little bit.
Thank you, Isaac. Thank you for pointing out the need to prioritize across different projects. And I see one more question here from Rachel. Rachel, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Sounds like you have a question for Renan.
Yes, thank you. So biochar comes up frequently as we talk about tree planting and innovations and ways that we can be looking at carbon sequestration and improved soil and reduced compaction, all those things that you, and I really appreciated your brief presentation. I look forward to seeing more of your work. But my question is, within your research, did you look at a specific site size needed to achieve those benefits that were seen with the biochar? For example, the reason I'm asking, so you're looking at roadside applications. If we were to look at a 4x4 foot tree well or 4x6 foot tree well, would that be a sufficient area to see some of those benefits, or did your research not address that?
Thank you, Rachel, for the question. We haven't really moved towards the area required. We have a sense based on other studies. Biochar can actually, the benefits of biochar, despite it depends on how much water is being infiltrated at a time. So the area is very important because the larger the area, the more runoff you're going to have. But we still didn't look at that. It depends a lot, right, on the contaminant level. But based on published studies, biochar has this possibility to be removing contaminants despite how big the area is, as well as the time. Let's say biochar is applied now, 10 years from now, it's still going to be good enough, and the benefits are still good enough. I hope I answered your question, but we can talk more about it.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions? And I hope our presenters will be sharing their presentations on our website, and in case you want to chat with them after our symposium and get any additional resources. Council is trying to collect as many resources about green infrastructure, better engaging with communities, better measuring some of those benefits. So if you have any of those, please email them to us and we'll feature them on our website. Panelists, do you have any, or presenters, do you have any questions of each other you would like to ask? Okay.
Hey, Ureli, this is Drew. I would just like to urge one or two more questions because I think Eileen has some closing words at 12:15. And so if we could stretch for a couple minutes, that would be great. I'm sure Isaac's got another question. And there you go.
I've got questions. I'm working on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always kind of hesitant to ask because I wonder if it's just my own brain kind of going off. So Isaac, I do have a question. Are there any general shared struggles that species are facing, you know, or is it unique from the butterfly to the mountain lion, or what are some of those kind of overlapping, and they may be obvious to some of us, but I have to ask the question.
No, that's a really good question. And that's something I think that's a great question. We should really be looking at that. Like, where are the, you know, that people have asked, like, where are the biodiversity hotspots in the city? And that might be a way to look at it. Like, where are there overlapping needs for many, many species in an urban, kind of an urban biodiversity hotspot, which is maybe real different because we're factoring in, like, you know, where do kids at schools never get to see even common native birds, you know, or so, you know, I think that's a really interesting kind of like a suitability analysis that I think would be maybe part of this, you know, this physical master plan. I think we need, you know, or at least physical planning guidance for where should go, you know, where the highest priorities to focus on. So yeah, I think that's a great one.
Yeah, I'm kind of just the reason I ask is, so there's maybe like 3 or 4 stories that I've heard from folks with my time at Tree People that really stick out to me, and one of them was from a teacher at a middle school in Watts, and she said that she's from the East Coast, she's from Vermont, you know, it's trees and all kinds of wildlife, and she said she was giving a lesson on math, and then all the kids just ran to the window. Right. So then, you know, think of like 13 or like, you know, maybe 13-year-olds running to the window. And she said the reason they ran to the window is because there was a squirrel. Right. So the kids, most of them had never seen a squirrel before in their lives. So they were just amazed at this, like, you know, this animal that was climbing up a tree and just kind of jumping around and had this like weird tail. So I do think that, you know, for all of us, as we kind of look for ways to work together and what are these things that kind of these access points for all of us in our different organizations, you know, obviously water and canopy and health and safety and sustainability. But I do think that this idea of biodiversity is really powerful, you know, and I think it has the potential to be rethought of as something that can link all of our works, right? Because it's so important, right? It's the wildfire idea, it's burning out animals, it's you know what we do with our own yards, it's you know it's enjoying nature when you go out for a hike, and you know it's all these different ways that you can think of, and I think your point is really powerful, and it feeds for a lot of other additional ideas and thinking how different communities think of that.
Great.
So thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Great. And with that, I think they're asking us to join the main room again for some closing comments from our executive director, Eileen. So please join us back. I think you just have to click leave room, and we'll see you all back there. Thank you so much for the presenters and for the great questions.
Thank you, everyone.